Hi, my name's Greg Voisin, and I'm here with Jeff Frick. And we're going to be talking about a new business that Jeff launched called Poetic Ripples. What's really interesting is this is quite a dynamic process that Jeff has. Jeff, welcome to the show. We're going to talk today a little bit about your new business that you launched called Poetic Ripples. What I'd like you to do is to tell our audiences just a little bit more about you and why it is that poetry became such an important aspect in your life and how you used it in business.
Great. Thank you, Greg. I started writing poetry probably, I think if I remember back when I was in camp as a little kid back in upstate New York, and I was kind of homesick from being away from the home. I remember writing a poem, how my brother's having so much fun and I'm bored, don't like anybody here, and I'd sent that to my parents. That was my first recollection of poetry.
Like Camp Granada, huh?
Like Camp, here I am at Camp Granada. It was kind of like that situation. I was always a pretty sensitive person growing up.
Yeah.
Sensitive to my environment, sensitive to people and relationships. And I found in high school I would journal also about situations that were coming up in my life, and I'd write little poetic things to kind of keep me in balance. As I got older in my early 20s, and I started to meet some real challenges in my life, I went deeply into poetry. And I found that poetry was a opiate for me. It was like going to therapy, going to my own inner therapist. And I was able to bridge situations that I was stuck in and move forward. And I found by the use of meditation and learning to stand still and stop things, I was able to get very inspiring poetry that helped me just move through whatever I was stuck in to the next phase of my life. And this was probably the main reason I wrote this book. I went back through the last 30 years and looked at these different poetic ripples or poems I had used to get me through and keep me focused.
Well, you know, Jeff, you had a very successful business, and I want you to let our listeners know a little bit about it. And you actually started using poetry in your business. You sold the business a little while ago, but you're now launching this new company called Poetic Ripples. Right. And the important aspect that I want you to get across to our audience is, how is this poetry being used to really transform business today?
It's kind of funny. I was thinking I'll give you 3 examples. One was my attorney. I wrote him a poem when I sent him the bill for his work he did for me. And he called me up and said, I've never had anybody write me a poem when they send me money for my services. But that was my way of thanking him for the service he had done. And it was a poetic thing he did for me to get me through a difficult time I was having with some legal issues.
Tell me some other stories.
Yeah,
about how you've used
another one I was
poems.
used that when people were retiring from the company I ran, they came up to me and asked me if I would do a poem about their history with our company and what they had really done to help, really made a contribution to the company. So we'd have these gatherings when people were leaving or retiring, and I would start off and read a poem about their life at the 2 different companies I had 2 different insurance agencies, and how they contributed, how unique they were as an individual, and how they really made a difference in our company.
One of the things poems are used for to help for reflection and help people going through some challenging times. And I understand also in communications. What have you done with poetry inside your own business and other examples that you could let our listeners know about that truly has helped people either transmute an issue or a problem or something where a poem actually inspired them to take some action that changed their life? Do you have any examples for us?
A couple examples where I use poetry a lot when I was talking with other executives of other companies that we were dealing with. I would use small little 2 or 3 poetic lines to kind of describe the issues we were going through in a poetic way, and then send them an email on that or a letter. I did all the letter writing. I do poems at the end of letters. And I found that kind of broke the ice a lot with, because in business, you have your desires of what you want. The other people you're dealing with have their own desires, what they want, and sometimes you're not on task with each other. And this was able to kind of break the ice and open up that communication.
So I have a question for you. If I was to engage your services, it's the Poetic Ripples impression process that you have, what could I expect? I mean, you're going to come into my company and you're going to try and help transform some of my people and some of the issues that are going on, communications, engagement, innovation, all of these challenges that businesses are facing today. How does it work? And how could I benefit by engaging you in this Poetic Ripples impression process?
I think you'll find with the methodology that I use that I would be able to come into your company and help you reflect and become aware of the poetic ripples that are really going on in your company now. Because they are. There are poetic ripples in all our companies, all our relationships. They're like our belief systems. I call them little poetic belief systems, impressions, possibilities. And I'd be able to come in there and help you with your staff become aware of those and to see if those were the visions that you want that are working in your company and if you're moving forward on there. It's a very individual process, too. We deal with not just the owners, but also everybody in the organization. For example, in my organization, we want to come up with a lingo for our company. And I put it out to the whole staff. And we had a contest within the company, and then we all chose from about 50 different lingos what we put on our stationery that represented fitness and wellness, insurance agency, my company. Everybody got stoked. They got involved in this thing. And it was the secretary that they picked, her lingo. It wasn't me, the executive. I was actually upset because I thought mine was the greatest. But they went and picked, somebody else. So that was a very integrating thing for our company.
So engagement, but inclusiveness, it sounds like. So in other words, this whole Poetic Ripples impression process is really about engaging the employees, but also inclusiveness of those employees so that they feel like they're making a contribution. Because I know a lot of people in today's workplace, they're looking for meaning. And you and I have talked about this before. This disengagement challenge we have going on in the world today is about the fact that people don't feel like the workplace have meaning. Is this poetry truly designed to help people get more meaning and make the people feel more engaged and included?
Well, I think it has to be because my drive and personal motivation has always been to find meaning in my life. And that's the life I live. And that's what I push down through the organization. I've tried to help people become aware of their uniqueness, their strengths, their weaknesses, become aware of how they're impacting the environment they're in, become aware of how authentic they are. I mean, through these poems, we could find people could work with, are they really living what they're talking about?
The values.
Are they really living those values? Right. Are they not? And are they really going deeply into knowing themselves? That was a big thing that I did a lot of different Myers-Briggs and different psychological testing in the firm to help people get to know themselves, and in turn, by knowing themselves, they got to know others.
Interesting. One of the things that we talked about previously was, these companies, most companies will have their mission, vision, values, and purpose stuck up on the wall.
Right.
And, we've talked about that. It's truly, well, now who created those? And the reality is oftentimes it was a small subset of the company, and not everybody was engaged in that, and not everybody in the company was actually living that. Can Poetic Ripples impression process truly help an organization in getting more people engaged in that and actually rewriting their mission, vision, values as poems?
Right.
And what does that look like for me? Because that really sounds fascinating. I mean, to me, it sounds exciting to actually have an opportunity to rewrite my mission, vision, value, and purpose statement that way.
Well, first of all, you find in a lot of organizations that they don't give any value to the mission statements and the vision statements. They feel they're taken out of a textbook somewhere, Harvard Business School or
Right.
whatever, and they all go, oh yeah. Even the executives feel the same way. In our process, it's a little different. First of all, we go in, talk to people, and ask them, what do you think is the vision of your company? And you get all kinds of responses, what people think the vision or the mission is. This process we do is for us to list what the visions you think the company represents now. And if they're ones that you all agree on, we'll move forward to those and learn to implement those visions, maybe more than they are now. On the other side, we create new visions. And it's an eternal, I've always been a strong proponent is that there's something, you have people that work for you. Let's take an example. I have a secretary that answers the phone, but she's 45 years old, raised 3 kids, takes care of a household. She has more strengths than I probably have. But does she ever utilize those? Do we ever ask them? Well, in this process, they're in there on the whiteboard listing what they think the vision should be. Mm-hmm. So it's getting them together. And it's even a process where I like to have the owners not in the room and have just the employees do one, and then maybe the owners do one, and then we find out an unbelievable thing. They're so far apart, it's unbelievable.
So let's talk about this issue of communications, because
Right.
poetry being used to help people break those barriers is so compelling to me. It's so interesting to think that a poem in the proper setting could truly help us transmute some issues that we might be having as a group or a team. And the biggest challenge businesses have today, both with their customers and all their stakeholders, is truly the transparency of their communication. And one thing I know about poetry is it truly is authentic and transparent. Tell me what a poem could really do to help improve communications within a company and help teams excel better.
Well, one thing I did out to my vendors one year is I did a Christmas card, which I wrote myself personally, about relationships that we have in business, how we connect, and how we're thankful for the goods and so forth. And I've used that one Christmas. Remember, I sent it out to all our vendors. And again, it's funny what happens is people really do have a soft, sensitive part that they want to express in the business world. But I remember somebody once told me, you've got to be business-like in the business and home, you be the home. Well, I kind of take a different approach. I think you need to be more personal in your business life and more business in your personal life. Mm-hmm. The opposite. Because how much time do we spend with each other every day? Just an inordinate amount of times. And I
You mean in the business world?
Oh, in the business world. It's incredible.
We're spending more time in the business world with our people than we are at home, usually with our families, aren't we?
yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's
poetry,
amazing.
the type of poetry I write, it's not deep and difficult and relating to English history or American history. It's what you're feeling at the moment, what you are expressing about an issue that's going on right now, just right today, not yesterday or tomorrow. So those can be very inspiring.
So now, one of the things we just talked about a second ago was engagement and innovation. Mm-hmm. And poetry in of itself is something that truly has you dig deep about becoming more innovative and more creative. Mm-hmm. And some of the people today would state that, as Americans, we've kind of lost our creative edge. We're on this doing more with less. We're downsizing people in work today. We're having all kinds of challenges. And one of the challenges we have is to stay really on the forefront of creativity. How do your poems, the poetic ripples impression process, help an employer today, help those employees become more innovative, more creative, build the spark, get that thing going inside of them?
I think what's happening today in today's society, from a business side, you got the big box companies, you got the Walmarts, you've got the Costco's, you've got the Targets, very impersonal. And I think what you're going to see in the future is more smaller, the specialized firms will come back again. And they'll come back to those firms that learn to be very creative on presenting a part of the market that people will be responsive to and will pay for, even if it's a little more. I think there's a, I don't know, it's gut level thing in the world that people really want to relate more. I don't, it's hard to explain what it is. And I think poetry is a way of helping. People just need help to express and to communicate. And I think that you'll see that coming in the smaller companies. To be more personal. It'd be almost like the day when you went to the meat market and you knew Joe and,
Right.
hi Joe, how are the kids? And you say, well, how are the kids? We're all, I think, starving.
For a connection.
We're starving for connection.
Yeah.
We're disconnected with all the technology. We just, with nature, and this poetry just has a way. When I've done my poetry and worked with some of the people in the company, it's amazing how earthy it is and how connecting it is with what's going on in their environment, what's going on around them.
If there's one thing you wanted to leave our viewers with here today to truly drive this point home about Poetic Ripples impression process and your way to come in a company and consult. I actually kind of look at you as a guide. You're almost like the Sherpa. You're helping people climb the mountain, but you're helping them along the way. You're guiding them. What would you want to tell them? What would you want to leave them with? That's saying, hey, this is how I can help you.
The way I can help you is become more aware of how you're relating to your environment. Be more aware of what's being reflected back to you. Mm-hmm. I can help you become more aware. How authentic are you? We find in the poetry that you become more authentic. And second, are you really doing the best you can to know yourself, to understand yourself? There's no good and bad people out there. We all just have unique aspects